Alright, I feel like saying something. This is just keeps coming back. This conversation about having to do something. This whole notion in Western society, especially, that, well, there are things that you just have to do. You have to do it, and you have to do it now, and we don't like it, but we grit our teeth and we bear through it, and we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and all of this forced bullshit. And it just feels wrong. And I want to be really open and aware and honest within myself that there's definitely something being triggered in regards to this conversation. So, ego is playing a role. But there's just this really deep sense within that that's not how this is meant to be. That's not how things are meant to work. We are not meant to force. We're not meant to struggle and push and strain. That if it is work, if you have to work that hard for it, it's not the right time. It's hard because you're not lining up with the energy, because you're not allowing things to naturally happen. That's why it's hard, and it's out of alignment. It's not being supported by nature. We can just let things happen. That thing that is so hard that you don't want to do, that feels like so much resistance is bound up in it, maybe you just don't do that yet. You don't do it now. And you don't worry about when it's going to happen or how. You just acknowledge it's not now. Now is not the time. That thing that you feel like you have to get done, because if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. Well, that's not true. It doesn't get done right now. It doesn't get done perhaps on the timetable or in the schedule, or again in the way that you or society, most likely somebody else, thinks that it should be, thinks that it's supposed to be. But what you think is supposed to be is not necessarily what's supposed to be. And if you think it should be this way and it's just not working, then it's not supposed to be that way. It should be easy. It should be relaxed. It should be natural. If you just wait, if it's a struggle, that's a sign for you to hold off. That's a sign for you to relax, to release, to let go of the control of this and let it be. So it doesn't happen right now. So that thing does not get done right now. That's okay. That means it doesn't need to be. Everything else is taken care of. This is taken care of. There is a time for this that's already scheduled, already allotted, an appointed time and place for all things. And then you can just relax, go with the flow of it, and when that time arrives, when you reach that place on the cycle for this thing to happen, it'll just happen. The impulse towards it will be so strong. Everything will line up, and you will feel so called towards it that you can't stop it from happening. It just comes through you. It just occurs. That's how everything is supposed to be. And you may say, well, but things like birth, that involves pain, that involves pushing, right? There's effort there. And I would say yes and no. Because again, what part of that process are you in control of? Are you really working to do anything? Are you organizing anything about that other than, well, it's going to happen at some point? Or are you letting this process naturally take place? When it comes time to push, your body starts to push. It happens. You begin having contractions. When it's time for that creation to emerge, to be born, when it is time for the action step to be taken, which is you participating in this pushing, you receive a physical impulse that is so strong you can't stop it. You begin having contractions. You don't decide, I'm gonna contract now. That's not how it works. You don't decide now is the time for me to give birth. The birth decides what time it's going to happen. And then you are pulled along into the flow with it. And you are just the participant. And there's really nothing you can do not to participate. There is no additional effort. There is only surrendering to what's happening and going with the flow and being fully present for it. That's it. That's not struggle. That's surrender. That's not effort. That's letting the flow take you and being fully embodied in that moment with just what the content of that moment is. And if the content of that moment naturally says push, then that's what you're doing. And if the content of that moment says rest, then that's what you're doing. This is how nature is designed to work. This is how all things are designed to work. If we just followed the schedule, if we just stopped trying to make the schedule, if we stopped trying to force things into some arbitrary, obligatory timetable that is meaningless, pointless, fruitless, just a bunch of unnecessary effort, really, and we just let things happen in the time and the place that is appointed for them, that is natural for them, there would be none of this stress, this efforting, this work, this whole fairy tale of, well, you just gotta do things that you don't want to do when you don't want to do them. No, you do not. No, you don't. And in fact, when you're forcing yourself to do that, you are working against the energy. You are putting energy out of balance. You are making it harder for yourself. You're putting energy out of balance, and then you know what nature is doing. It's working overtime to correct that imbalance. And so all of your pushing, all of your forcing, all of your, I'm going to get this done as quickly as possible. I'm going to get it done by the deadline. I'm going to finish all of these things. You know what that amounts to? Burnout. An enforced period of rest. You did too much. You did too much too quickly. You worked too hard. You put too much effort into it that you didn't need to put into it. And now you have to balance that out with a sustained period of rest. Which means all of that productivity, the golden magical word, just falls to the wayside. You're not allowed to produce that way anymore, because you know what you're actually doing? You're doing the real work in this moment. All of the real work is done in stillness. All of the real action takes place in inactivity. It's all about the alignment. It is the difference between trying to knock over every single domino individually and arranging them in line so that instead of 100 pushes, it takes just one moment, one instant, one tiny action, one minuscule effort that creates all of this change. That's how it's designed to work. You are intended to rest most of the time. You are intended to be in stillness most of the time. That's how things are aligning. You are letting things align for you. And then when they are aligned, you will receive the impulse and you'll be present for it. You'll be aware of it. You will not miss it. It'll be so clear. When things are ready for you, you'll receive the impulse to take the aligned action. There will be no question. There will be no contemplation. It's just an obvious, natural next step. You will be unable to resist taking that step. It'll feel so good and so right and just be the natural expression of the moment. You'll take it, and all of this stuff will just fall into place. Everything just happens with an ounce of the effort and the time and all of it that would otherwise have been put into that project, whatever it is. Honor the rest. The car is agreeing with me. Honor the stillness. Do less. Do so much fucking less. And you will accomplish so much more just with the effort of non-physical behind you, with the alignment of the energy that's how this is supposed to work.